The medical station floated in the darkness between stars like a giant white flower with metal petals. Inside its sterile corridors, Nurse Kira moved with practiced grace despite her tall frame and the 4 arms that marked her as one of the Aldhari people. Her blue-tinted skin caught the soft lights as she checked her patients in the xenobiology ward, where beings from across the galaxy came when their own species' medicine could not help them. The emergency alarm broke the quiet of the night shift with sharp electronic screams. Kira's large dark eyes widened as she heard the announcement echo through the halls. A human vessel was requesting immediate docking with critical injuries aboard. Humans were still new to the galactic community, having joined only 5 years ago, and Kira had never treated one personally. The medical database contained basic information about their species, but practical experience was limited among the station staff. She rushed to the emergency bay where Dr. Vex was already waiting. The reptilian doctor scaled hands moved quickly over his datapad as he reviewed what little information they had received. His yellow eyes met Kira's briefly before turning to his preparations. The docking clamps engaged a metallic clang that vibrated through the station's hull, and moments later the airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. 2 humans in worn spacesuits carried a third between them on a makeshift stretcher. The injured one was unconscious, his face pale beneath dark hair that was matted with sweat and blood. His breathing was shallow and rapid, and Kira could see dark stains spreading across the fabric of his suit around both legs. The 2 carrying him looked exhausted but determined, their eyes darting around the unfamiliar alien medical facility, with a mixture of hope and wariness. The taller of the 2 carriers spoke first, his voice rough with fatigue and stress. His name was Jake, he explained quickly, and his unconscious friend was Tom, a merchant trader like himself. Their small cargo ship had been attacked by pirates near the Outer Rim colonies, and Tom had taken the worst of the weapons fire while trying to seal a hull breach. They had been traveling for 3 days straight to reach the medical station, taking turns piloting while the other watched over their injured friend. Kira gestured for them to follow her to the trauma bay while Dr. Vex began his examination. Tom's vital signs were weak but stable according to Universal Medical Scanner, though the readings showed some unusual patterns that made Kira frown. His heart rate was higher than expected for an unconscious patient, and his body temperature fluctuated in ways that seemed inconsistent with the standard profiles in their database. As they carefully cut away Tom's damaged spacesuit, the extent of his injuries became clear. Both legs showed severe burns and what appeared to be projectile wounds, with torn flesh and damaged tissue that should have been causing massive blood loss. Yet somehow, Tom had survived the 3-day journey without proper medical attention. Dr. Vex muttered something in his native language as he worked, his scaled fingers surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the wounds. But it was what Kira saw next that made her breath catch in her throat, around the worst of Tom's injuries. His skin was showing signs of inflammation that seemed to pulse and move with its own rhythm. The tissue was swollen and hot to the touch, with a reddish coloration that spread outward from each wound in branching patterns like the roots of some strange plant. Her medical training told her this could be a sign of severe infection or some unknown disease process. She quickly activated the station's biocontainment protocols and sealed the trauma bay, much to the alarm of Tom's 2 friends who found themselves suddenly cut off from their injured companion by a wall of transparent aluminum. Jake pressed his hands against the barrier and demanded to know what was happening, while his partner Mark paced back and forth with growing agitation. Dr. Vex ran every scan available in their medical database, but the results only deepened the mystery. The inflammation was not caused by any known pathogen or toxin. Instead, it seemed to be some kind of hyperactive biological response from Tom's own body. His white blood cell count was elevated far beyond normal ranges for any species they had encountered, and his cellular regeneration rates were showing readings that the computer initially flagged as equipment malfunction. As hours passed, Kira found herself fascinated despite her growing concern. The human's body seemed to be fighting the injuries with an intensity that was almost violent. The inflamed tissue pulsed with increased blood flow, and microscopic analysis showed massive numbers of repair cells flooding the damaged areas. It was like watching a war being fought on a cellular level, with Tom's immune system marshaling resources with military precision. The strangest part was that despite the alarming appearance of the inflammation, Tom's overall condition was actually improving. His vital signs were slowly strengthening, and the wounds themselves were beginning to show signs of healing at a rate that defied everything Kira knew about biology. Most species in the galaxy healed slowly and steadily, requiring weeks or months to recover from serious injuries. But Tom's body seemed to be operating on an accelerated timeline that pushed every biological process into overdrive. Dr. Vex was clearly troubled by what he was observing. In his 40 years of practice, he had never seen anything like the aggressive healing response they were witnessing. The inflammation that had initially appeared so threatening was actually part of an incredibly sophisticated repair mechanism that seemed unique to human physiology. Every few hours, he would run new scans and shake his scaled head in disbelief at the results. Kira began accessing every piece of information available about human evolutionary history, trying to understand what could have produced such remarkable biological capabilities. The data painted a picture of a species that had evolved on a world of constant challenges and dangers. Earth had subjected early humans to ice ages, natural disasters, predators, diseases, and environmental extremes that would have destroyed most developing species. Those who survived had been forced to adapt systems that could respond quickly to trauma and heal rapidly from injuries. As the station's day cycle progressed, more medical staff came to observe the unusual case. Word had spread through the facility about the human patient whose body was performing what seemed like medical miracles. Some of the senior doctors expressed concern about the implications of such rapid healing abilities, wondering what other surprises human physiology might hold. Others were fascinated by the potential applications if they could understand and perhaps replicate the mechanisms involved. Tom's two friends remained in the waiting area, catching brief periods of sleep in the uncomfortable chairs while maintaining their vigil. Jake had explained that their small crew had been together for 2 years, running cargo between the frontier colonies and the established worlds. Tom was not just their partner but their friend, and they refused to leave despite having no idea how long his treatment might take. By the end of Kira's shift, Tom's condition had stabilized to the point where Dr. Vex was cautiously optimistic about his chances for recovery. The mysterious inflammation was beginning to subside as the healing process continued its work, leaving behind tissue that looked healthier and stronger than before the injury. It was as if Tom's body was not just repairing the damage, but improving upon the original design. As Kira prepared to hand over care to the next shift, she found herself looking forward to seeing how Tom's recovery would progress. The human species had clearly evolved capabilities that could revolutionize their understanding of medical treatment and healing. What had initially appeared to be a shocking and dangerous inflammation was turning out to be one of the most remarkable biological processes she had ever witnessed. The medical station continued its quiet orbit through space, carrying within its walls a patient whose very existence challenged everything the galactic medical community thought they knew about the limits of biological healing. Tom slept peacefully in his biocontainment bed, unaware that his unconscious body was rewriting the textbooks on xenobiology with every passing hour. The morning shift brought new energy to the medical station as Kira returned to check on her human patient. She had spent her off hours reading everything available about Earth and its people, fascinated by the world that could produce such remarkable healing abilities. The planet seemed to be a collection of extremes, from frozen polar regions to burning deserts, with weather patterns that could change from calm to deadly within hours. Tom was awake when she entered the biocontainment room, his brown eyes alert and focused despite the trauma his body had endured. He tried to sit up as she approached, wincing slightly but moving with more strength than should have been possible for someone in his condition. The inflammation around his wounds had continued to decrease overnight, leaving behind skin that looked healthier than the surrounding uninjured tissue. He spoke in the common galactic trade language, though his accent was different from what Kira had heard in the training recordings. His voice was steady and clear, showing no signs of the weakness that should have accompanied such serious injuries. He thanked her for medical care and asked about his friends, expressing concern for their well-being even though he was the one who had nearly died from his wounds. Kira explained the biocontainment protocols and why his friends could not visit yet, but Tom seemed to understand precautions. What surprised her was his casual attitude toward his own injuries. He looked down at his legs with the same expression someone might use when examining a minor scrape, as if the wounds that had brought him close to death were nothing more than an inconvenience. When she asked about his pain levels, Tom shrugged and said it was manageable. The medical scanners indicated tissue damage that should have been causing severe discomfort, yet he appeared relaxed and comfortable. He even made jokes about the situation, laughing when he described how Jake had panicked during their escape from the pirates, while Mark had complained about missing his sleep schedule. Dr. Vex arrived with his morning rounds and immediately began running new scans on Tom's injuries. The results were even more remarkable than the previous day's readings. The healing rate had not slowed during the night, but had actually accelerated in some areas. Cellular regeneration was occurring at speeds that the computer systems flagged as impossible, yet the evidence was right there in the scanner displays. The reptilian doctor asked Tom a series of questions about human medical history and healing processes. Tom answered honestly, but seemed genuinely surprised by the intensity of their interest in what he considered normal recovery. He mentioned that his grandfather had survived much worse injuries during Earth's colonial expansion period and had been back to work within a week. To him, the rapid healing was simply how human bodies worked. This casual revelation made Dr. Vex pause in his examination. If Tom's healing rate was typical for his species, then humans possess biological capabilities that could revolutionize medical treatment across the galaxy. Most species required months to recover from injuries like Tom's, with many never returned to full functionality. The implications were staggering for both medical science and galactic society. Kira found herself asking Tom about Earth's medical practices and was fascinated by his descriptions of human emergency medicine. Humans had developed techniques for treating trauma that seemed almost barbaric by galactic standards, involving direct intervention in ways that would kill most other species. Yet these aggressive treatments worked because human bodies could withstand and recover from medical procedures that would be fatal to others. Tom explained that humans had always lived with the expectation of injury and recovery. Their history was full of people who had survived accidents, diseases, and trauma that would have ended the lives of beings from more stable worlds. Children were expected to heal quickly from the bumps and scrapes of growing up, and adults worked in dangerous conditions knowing their bodies could handle the risks. As the day progressed, more medical staff came to observe Tom's case. Word had spread throughout the station about the human, whose body defied conventional medical understanding. Some of the doctors wanted to take tissue samples for research, while others suggested keeping Tom under observation for extended periods to study his healing mechanisms. Dr. Vex was becoming increasingly concerned about the broader implications of human biology. In a private conversation with Kira, he expressed worry about what other surprises the human species might hold. If they could heal this rapidly from severe trauma, what other capabilities might they possess that could disrupt the careful balance of galactic civilization? His reptilian species values stability and predictability, and humans seem to represent the opposite of both qualities. Kira disagreed with her superior's cautious approach, arguing that Tom's abilities represented an opportunity rather than a threat. If they could understand how human healing worked, they might be able to develop treatments that could help other species recover more quickly from injuries and diseases. The medical benefits could transform healthcare throughout the galaxy. Their discussion was interrupted by an emergency alert from the station's external sensors. A small fleet of ships was approaching at high speed, and their transponder signals identified them as the same pirate group that had attacked Tom's vessel. The station security chief announced that the pirates were demanding the surrender of any human survivors from their previous attack, claiming they carried stolen cargo that needed to be recovered. Tom's reaction to this news surprised everyone in the medical bay. Instead of fear or concern, his expression hardened with determination and anger. He asked about the station's defensive capabilities and whether his friends were safe, then began trying to get out of his medical bed despite his injuries. When Kira tried to stop him, he gently but firmly moved her aside with strength that should not have been possible for someone in his condition. The security alert escalated as the pirate ships began jamming communications and demanding immediate compliance with their ultimatum. Station personnel moved to emergency stations while the medical staff continued their work, but tension filled the air like a physical presence. Tom insisted that he needed help with the defense, claiming that he knew the pirates' tactics and could provide valuable intelligence. Dr. Vex refused to allow Tom to leave the medical bay, citing both his injuries and the biocontainment protocols that were still in effect. The argument between them grew heated as Tom's frustration mounted, his human stubbornness clashing with the doctor's medical authority. Kira found herself caught between them, understanding both perspectives, but seeing the determination in Tom's eyes that suggested he would not be easily contained. The pirate ships moved closer to the station while their leader continued making demands over the emergency channels. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had never met serious resistance from medical facilities, which were typically considered neutral territory in galactic conflicts. But Tom's presence changed the dynamics of the situation in ways that none of them fully understood yet. As alarms continued to sound throughout the station, Tom's healing rate seemed to increase even further in response to the stress and urgency of the situation. His body was preparing for action with the same intensity it had shown in fighting his injuries. The mysterious inflammation that had so concerned the medical staff was revealing itself as just one aspect of human biology that was far more complex and capable than anyone had imagined. Kira watched the scanner readings climb higher as Tom's system flooded with adrenaline and other hormones that enhanced his physical capabilities. His heart rate increased but remained steady. His breathing deepened, and his muscle responses sharpened to levels that seemed almost supernatural. Whatever evolutionary pressures had shaped humanity on Earth had created beings who thrived under the very conditions that paralyzed most other species. The medical bay had become the center of a crisis that would test not just the station's defenses, but also everything they thought they knew about the newest members of the galactic community. Tom's rapid healing was just the beginning of revelations about human capabilities that would change how the galaxy viewed the species from the dangerous blue world at the edge of civilized space. The pirate ships held their position just outside the station's defensive perimeter, while their leader continued his demands over the communication channels. Tom sat on the edge of his medical bed, his legs showing remarkable improvement from just hours before, as he listened to the threats being broadcast throughout the facility. His jaw was set with determination, and Kira could see the frustration building in his eyes as he was forced to remain inactive while danger approached his friends and the people who had saved his life. Dr. Vex paced the medical bay while monitoring the external situation through his datapad, his scaled hands trembling slightly with nervousness that he tried to hide. Most medical stations in galactic space operated under strict neutrality agreements that protected them from military conflicts, but pirates were not known for respecting such conventions. The station's small security force was designed more for crowd control than actual combat, leaving them vulnerable to a determined attack. Tom began explaining what he knew about the pirate group that had attacked their cargo ship, providing details that made Kira realize how much thought he had given to their tactics and weaknesses. He described their leader as someone who relied on intimidation rather than actual fighting ability, preferring to attack weak targets and retreat quickly when faced with any real resistance. The pirates had caught Tom's crew by surprise near an asteroid field, using the rocky cover to launch their assault before the merchant vessel could escape. The security chief arrived in the medical bay to interview Tom about the pirates, hoping to gain intelligence that might help defend the station. Tom's answers were precise and detailed, showing a tactical awareness that surprised the alien security officer. He explained how the pirates had disabled their engines first to prevent escape, then focused their weapons on the cargo holds rather than the crew areas, suggesting they wanted to capture valuable goods rather than simply destroy the ship. But what struck Kira most was Tom's attitude toward the whole situation. While everyone else on the station showed varying degrees of fear and anxiety about the approaching threat, Tom seemed almost eager for the confrontation. His body language had changed from that of a recovering patient to something more predatory, as if the presence of his attackers had awakened some deeper aspect of his human nature. Dr. Vex noticed the same transformation and ran another medical scan on Tom, discovering that his hormone levels had shifted dramatically in response to the stress of the situation. His adrenal system was producing compounds at rates that would have been toxic to most species, yet Tom showed no signs of negative effects. Instead, he appeared more alert and physically capable than he had since arriving at the station. The healing process in Tom's legs had not only continued, but seemed to be accelerating even further under the influence of the stress hormones flooding his system. The wounds that had brought him close to death were now showing signs of complete recovery, with new tissue forming at rates that the medical scanner struggled to track accurately. It was as if his body was preparing itself for the physical demands of combat by prioritizing the repair of any damage that might limit his effectiveness. Kira found herself fascinated by the biological mechanisms at work in Tom's system, recognizing patterns that suggested humans had evolved under constant pressure from predators and environmental threats. Most galactic species had developed on worlds where cooperation and careful planning were the keys to survival, leading to biological systems that favor stability and gradual adaptation. But humans seem to have evolved on a world where sudden violence and rapid response were necessary for survival. The station's commander arrived to discuss defensive options with the security chief, and their conversation revealed the limited nature of their capabilities. The medical facility had been designed with the assumption that its neutral status would protect it from military threats, leaving them with only basic shielding and a few automated defense systems. Against a determined pirate attack, their chances of successful resistance were minimal. Tom listened to their discussion with growing impatience, finally interrupting to offer his assistance in ways that shocked everyone present. He proposed using the station's maintenance tunnels to reach the docking bays, where he could sabotage the pirate ships if they attempted to board. When Dr. Vex protested that his injuries made such activity impossible, Tom stood and walked across the room, without any sign of the weakness that should have kept him bedridden. The demonstration of his physical recovery was dramatic enough to silence the medical staff's objections, but also raised new concerns about human capabilities that went beyond simple healing. Tom's movement showed a coordination and strength that seemed enhanced rather than just restored, as if the trauma and recovery process had somehow improved his physical condition beyond its original state. Jake and Mark were finally allowed into medical bay under emergency protocols, and their reunion with Tom revealed more about human social bonds and loyalty. The two men had refused offers to evacuate to safer areas of the station, insisting that they would not abandon their friend regardless of the danger. Their determination to stay and fight alongside Tom showed a species-wide tendency toward fierce loyalty and protective behavior that impressed even the cynical security chief. The three humans began planning their response to the pirate threat with an intensity and focus that seemed almost military in nature. They discussed tactics and strategies with casual familiarity, as if preparing for combat was something they had done many times before. Their conversation revealed that human merchant crews routinely faced dangers that would terrify most galactic civilians, from system failures in deep space to attacks by various criminal organizations. Kira realized that what she had initially seen as shocking inflammation was actually part of a comprehensive biological system designed to keep humans functional under extreme stress and physical trauma. Their bodies could not only heal rapidly from injuries, but could actually improve their capabilities in response to threatening situations. It was a survival mechanism that had allowed them to thrive on a dangerous world, and then carry those advantages into the broader galaxy. Dr. Vex continued monitoring Tom's vital signs and noticed that all three humans showed similar physiological responses to the crisis situation. Their heart rates had increased but remained steady, their breathing had deepened to improve oxygen delivery, and their muscle tension showed they were prepared for immediate physical action. Most other species would have been paralyzed by fear or overwhelmed by stress hormones, but the humans seemed to be energized by the danger. The pirate leader's communications became more threatening as his patience wore thin, demanding immediate surrender to the human survivors and any cargo they might be carrying. His tone suggested someone accustomed to easy victories over helpless targets, but Tom's expression showed that he was counting on that overconfidence to provide an advantage in the coming confrontation. As the station staff prepared for what seemed like an inevitable attack, Tom's rapid healing and enhanced physical capabilities were beginning to look less like medical anomalies and more like natural advantages that could tip the balance in their favor. The mysterious inflammation that had initially concerned the medical team was revealing itself as just one aspect of human biology that was far more sophisticated and dangerous than anyone had realized. The medical bay had become a war room where three humans planned a defense that could either save the station or result in their destruction. But Tom's confidence in the physical transformation he had undergone suggested that the pirates might have made a serious mistake in pursuing their former victims to a place where they could receive medical care and support from unexpected allies. The first pirate ship docked with the station's outer ring with a violent clang that shook the entire structure, sending vibrations through the corridors and causing emergency lights to flicker throughout the medical bay. Tom was already moving before the docking clamps fully engaged, his recovery so complete that he seemed to have more energy than before his injuries. Jake and Mark followed close behind him as they made their way toward the maintenance tunnels, carrying tools and equipment they had gathered from the station's emergency supplies. Kira watched them disappear into the service corridors with a mixture of admiration and disbelief at the transformation she had witnessed. Less than 2 days ago, Tom had been unconscious and near death from wounds that should have taken months to heal, yet now he was moving with the fluid grace of someone in perfect physical condition. The mysterious inflammation that had initially alarmed her was completely gone, leaving behind tissue that looked stronger and more resilient than normal human skin. Dr. Vex monitored the situation from his command console while coordinating with the station's security forces. But his attention kept returning to the medical readings from Tom's biosensors that he had insisted the human wear. The data showed physiological responses that defied everything he knew about biology, with stress hormones reaching levels that should have been fatal, yet somehow enhancing rather than degrading Tom's physical capabilities. The pirates moved through the station's outer sections with casual arrogance, their leader broadcasting demands for the immediate surrender of all human personnel and any cargo they might be carrying. Their weapons were crude but effective, designed more for intimidation and precision, and they seemed confident that the medical facility's minimal security would offer no real resistance to their assault. But Tom and his crew had spent their time well, using their knowledge of ship systems and mechanical engineering to prepare surprises for the attacking pirates. The maintenance tunnels gave them access to power conduits, life support systems, and structural weak points that the invaders never expected to be threatened. Jake worked on disabling the gravity generators in key sections, while Mark sabotaged the lighting and communication systems that the pirates were using to coordinate their advance. Tom focused on the most dangerous task, making his way toward the docked pirate ships to prevent their escape and cut off reinforcements from the rest of the fleet. His movements through the narrow service corridor showed a combination of speed and stealth that impressed even the station's security chief, who was monitoring their progress through internal sensors and providing tactical updates when possible. The first sign of the humans' counterattack came when gravity suddenly failed in the central corridor where the main group of pirates was advancing. The sudden weightlessness sent the attackers tumbling through the air in confusion, their weapons firing wildly as they struggled to regain control of their movements. Most galactic species were poorly adapted to zero-gravity conditions, having evolved on stable planetary surfaces, but humans had trained for such environments as part of their expansion into space. Jake appeared from a maintenance hatch above the floating pirates, using the zero-gravity to his advantage as he moved between them with controlled movements that looked almost like dancing. His improvised weapons were simple tools from the station's workshop, but he wielded them with an effectiveness that showed humans had a natural talent for combat that went beyond formal training. Within minutes, half the pirate boarding party was unconscious or disabled, drifting helplessly in the weightless corridor. Mark's sabotage of the lighting systems created additional chaos as sections of the station plunged into darkness just as the pirates were trying to advance. Emergency lighting provided minimal visibility, but the humans seemed to adapt to the low light conditions much better than their attackers. Their eyes adjusted quickly to the dimness, and they moved through the darkened corridors with confidence while the pirates stumbled and called out to each other in confusion. Kira found herself glued to the monitor displays that showed the progress of the battle, fascinated by the tactical intelligence the humans demonstrated as they turned the station's own systems into weapons against their attackers. They seemed to understand instinctively how to use their environment to maximum advantage, finding weaknesses and opportunities that the more technologically advanced pirates had overlooked. Tom reached the docking bay where the first pirate ship was connected to the station, and his approach to disabling their vessel showed the same practical intelligence that had characterized the species throughout their rapid rise in galactic society. Instead of trying to damage the ship's weapons or engines directly, he focused on the life support and navigation systems that would strand the pirates even if they managed to retreat to their vessel. The pirate leader's confident broadcast became increasingly frantic as his boarding parties failed to report in, and his tactical situation deteriorated rapidly. He had expected to overwhelm a peaceful medical facility with minimal resistance, but instead found himself facing opponents who seemed to thrive under the pressure of combat and turned every disadvantage into an opportunity for counterattack. Dr. Vex watched the medical readings from Tom's biosensors with growing amazement as the human's physical performance continued to exceed theoretical limits for his species. Heart rate, oxygen consumption, and neural activity all showed levels that indicated enhanced capability rather than the degradation that stress typically caused in other beings. It was as if humans had evolved biological systems specifically designed to excel under the conditions that paralyze most other species. The second wave of pirates found themselves trapped in corridors where the artificial gravity shifted unpredictably. Lights failed at crucial moments, and their communication systems suffered mysterious interference that left them isolated and confused. Jake and Mark had turned the station's environmental controls into a maze of hazards that required constant adaptation and quick thinking to navigate successfully. But it was Tom's assault on the pirate ships themselves that proved most decisive in the battle's outcome. His understanding of spacecraft systems allowed him to disable their vessels in ways that would take hours to repair, effectively stranding the attackers aboard a station where they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered by opponents who seemed to anticipate their every move. The station's security forces, initially overwhelmed by the pirate attack, found themselves able to regroup and take offensive action as the human sabotage efforts created opportunities for organized resistance. The combination of human tactical innovation and alien technical expertise proved more effective than either could have achieved alone, demonstrating the potential for cooperation between species with complementary strengths. Kira realized that she was witnessing more than just an impressive military action, but a demonstration of human capabilities that could reshape galactic understanding of her species. The rapid healing that had initially seemed like a medical anomaly was actually part of a comprehensive survival system that allowed humans to recover quickly from setbacks and maintain peak performance under extreme stress. The pirate leader's final transmission before his communication systems failed completely was a mixture of threats and confusion. Clearly unable to understand how his overwhelming advantage had been turned into a complete tactical disaster. His fleet began withdrawing from the station's perimeter as word of the failed boarding action spread among his crews, unwilling to risk further losses against opponents who had proven far more dangerous than expected. As the immediate threat receded, Tom and his companions began emerging from the maintenance tunnels and service corridors where they conducted their guerrilla campaign. Their faces showed the satisfaction of a job well done, but also a casual attitude toward the violence they had just employed that reminded everyone present that humans came from a world where such skills were necessary for survival. The medical bay became a gathering point for the station staff and the human crew as they assessed the results of the battle, and began treating the injured pirates who had been captured during the fighting. Tom's complete recovery from his original injuries was now overshadowed by questions about what other capabilities his species might possess that could change the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The aftermath of the pirate attack brought a strange quiet to the medical station as staff members moved through the corridors assessing damage and treating the wounded from both sides of the conflict. Tom sat in the same medical bay where his journey had begun just days earlier, but now he was helping Dr. Vex examine the injured pirates rather than being a patient himself. His complete recovery seemed almost miraculous compared to the slow healing process that the alien prisoners were experiencing from their relatively minor injuries. Kira found herself studying not just Tom's remarkable physical condition, but the way he approached the medical work with the same practical intelligence he had shown during the battle. His hands moved with surprising gentleness as he assisted with bandaging and basic first aid, showing a natural understanding of anatomy and injury treatment that suggested humans had extensive experience dealing with trauma and recovery. The station's commander arrived in the medical bay with a formal commendation for the 3 humans who had turned a potential disaster into a decisive victory against overwhelming odds. But Tom and his crew seemed more interested in discussing the technical aspects of their defensive strategy than in receiving praise for their actions. They talked about the battle as if it had been a challenging engineering problem rather than a life-or-death struggle, analyzing what had worked well and what could be improved for future reference. Dr. Vex had spent hours reviewing the medical data from Tom's biosensors during the battle, and the results had shaken his understanding of biological limits and capabilities. The human had maintained peak physical performance throughout the entire engagement, while his body continued the accelerated healing process that had amazed the medical staff. His hormone levels had remained stable at concentrations that should have caused system failure in any other known species. The broader implications of human biological capabilities were becoming clear to everyone on the station as they processed what they had witnessed. If Tom's healing rate and stress response were typical for his species, then humans represented a fundamentally different approach to survival that could revolutionize medical treatment and crisis response throughout the galaxy. Their bodies seemed designed to thrive under exactly the conditions that crippled most other civilizations. Jake and Mark had already begun discussing plans to spread word of their experience throughout the merchant networks that connected the frontier colonies with the established galactic civilization. They wanted other humans to know that their natural abilities were valued and respected by alien medical professionals, encouraging more of their species to seek treatment at facilities that might not understand their unique physiology. Kira began working on a comprehensive medical report that would document everything they had learned about human healing and stress response during Tom's treatment and the subsequent crisis. Her findings would need to be shared with medical facilities throughout the galaxy to ensure that future human patients received appropriate care based on accurate understanding of their biological capabilities rather than assumptions based on other species. The research implications were staggering as Dr. Vex began to understand how human regenerative abilities might be applied to treating patients from other species. If they could isolate and understand the mechanisms that allowed such rapid healing, they might be able to develop treatments that could help beings who currently face permanent disability or death from injuries that humans would consider minor inconveniences. Tom volunteered to provide tissue samples and undergo additional testing to help advance the research, showing the same willingness to help others that had characterized the species throughout their brief time in galactic society. His casual attitude toward procedures that would terrify most patients demonstrated how humans viewed pain and discomfort as temporary obstacles rather than serious concerns. The station security chief requested detailed debriefings from all three humans about their tactical methods and strategic thinking during the battle, hoping to incorporate their approaches into training programs for other facilities that might face similar threats. The humans' ability to turn environmental disadvantages into tactical advantages had impressed military professionals throughout the sector who had reviewed recordings of engagement. As word of the incident spread through galactic communication networks, requests began arriving from medical facilities, military organizations, and research institutions seeking to learn more about human capabilities and potential applications for their unique biological traits. The mysterious inflammation that had initially concerned Kira was now being recognized as part of a sophisticated survival system that could benefit species throughout the galaxy. Tom's merchant crew received offers from several major shipping companies who were interested in hiring humans for dangerous cargo runs through pirate-infested regions of space. Their demonstrated ability to survive and fight back against overwhelming odds made them valuable assets for commercial operations that required both courage and practical problem-solving skills under extreme pressure. But perhaps most importantly, the medical staff at the station had gained a new understanding of how different species could complement each other's strengths and capabilities. Kira's careful monitoring and treatment had provided the stable environment Tom needed for his natural healing abilities to function properly, while his tactical skills and physical capabilities had protected everyone when their peaceful medical mission was threatened by violence. Dr. Vex found himself revising fundamental assumptions about medical treatment and biological limitations as he incorporated the lessons learned from Tom's case into the station's protocols and procedures. The reptilian doctor's initial caution about human capabilities had evolved into genuine respect and scientific curiosity about what other surprises the species might hold for galactic civilization. The three humans prepared to leave the medical station aboard a new cargo vessel provided by grateful merchants who had heard about their successful defense against the pirates. Tom's leg showed no sign of the severe injuries that had brought him close to death just days earlier, and his overall physical condition appeared to be better than before the original attack on their ship. Kira accompanied them to the docking bay where their new ship waited, carrying medical supplies and equipment that Tom might need during future emergencies. She had also prepared detailed instructions for treating human injuries based on their unique healing capabilities, hoping to help other medical professionals who might encounter members of his species in similar circumstances. The farewell between the nurse and her former patient carried emotional weight that reflected the mutual respect and understanding they had developed during their brief but intense relationship. Tom thanked her not just for saving his life, but for taking the time to understand and document his species' medical needs rather than simply trying to force human biology to fit alien treatment protocols. as the cargo ship pulled away from the medical station and disappeared into the star field. Kira returned to her duties with new appreciation for the diversity of life in the galaxy and the potential for different species to learn from each other's strengths. The mysterious inflammation that had initially shocked her with its intensity was now understood as part of a remarkable biological system that could teach other species new approaches to healing and survival. The medical station continued its orbit through space, but it now carried within its databases and protocols knowledge that would help save lives and advance medical science throughout the galactic community. Tom's case had become a landmark in xenobiology that would be studied and referenced for generations, showing how apparent medical anomalies could actually represent evolutionary advantages that benefited not just the species that possessed them, but everyone willing to learn from their example. The story of a human merchant who had shocked a medical station with his rapid healing abilities became part of the growing legend of his species throughout the galaxy, adding to the reputation of humans as beings who could thrive under conditions that would destroy others, and who were always willing to help those who showed them respect and understanding in return.